right, so, and then for you also, Tim, this is the microphone that is actually being recorded. Ready? Good. I want to welcome everybody here tonight. Again, my name's Tom Camber. I'm the executive director of Oats, and we're here for the newest installment of a program called Planet Talks. We are very excited to have Tim Carpenter, who is the founder and executive director of Engage, here to speak with us tonight. He's going to talk about creativity and the arts and aging and residential dwellings, and talk about a program that he has innovated in California for the last 16 years, which is really one of the most compelling and innovative and effective programs that integrates arts into a sort of residential environment and works with older people in really creative and powerful ways. We were going to be joined by Ronnie Eldridge tonight as our moderator, but she has been called away on business. She couldn't be here, so I am going to be filling in with some of the question and answer period. I'll do my best, although we will miss Ronnie. She will be back at the next Planet Talk event that we schedule, so you'll all see her again. We are the exciting backdrop to this I just want to say just a couple of words here. So many people, when they think about aging, think about it in fairly predetermined ways. We think about getting older, we think about nursing homes, or we think about these aging facilities where people come and play bingo, or they have a sandwich for the day, or they retire and they go play golf. And we have all these kind of well-trammeled paths that people just kind of get into, what seems to me a little bit like a stereotype. And so often, the stereotypes sometimes are true, and frankly, there are a lot of people that like to play bingo, and there are a lot of people that do retire and go play golf, and there's nothing wrong with that. But when that becomes the whole conversation around aging, we end up in a scenario where we're not really, we're becoming kind of trapped by our own ideas and trapped by what's been going on before. And when we started Oats a few years back, people said, do seniors really want to learn about technology? Can a 70-year-old learn how to do Gmail? And our thinking was, in fact, they can, but we need to work to create new opportunities for people and test out different models. And we all made a lot of mistakes doing it and tried out some things that didn't work, but slowly we began making progress to the point where tonight we have the Exploration Center, which is on track for 20,000 visits this year. We have an incredibly high number of people visiting the center. Our website has 110,000 people on seniorplanet.org every month that are reading the articles. We've got 24 locations up here in New York City that are operating right now. And what I'm proudest of is that when you talk to individuals around the center, everybody is here with a purpose, and their lives are being changed. They're changing their own lives, they're sharing their ideas with each other, and incredible things are happening. People are starting businesses, and they're reconnecting with old friends and family, and we're really doing different, kind of new things here. And so as we look out around the country and look for other people that are broadening that discussion and challenging us to think in different ways, we're looking for people that are expanding our ideas and that are real innovators. And so Barbara Aria, who's the editor of Senior Planet, has been scouring the country for the coolest and most interesting people to talk to, and we found Tim Carpenter, who I had heard of a while back because he is not just a nonprofit executive who founded his own nonprofit to do creative arts for seniors, but also is an Ashoka Fellow. Ashoka is a nonprofit that celebrates innovators and social entrepreneurs, who are people that start new programs and come up with new ways of solving older social problems with different innovative strategies. And Tim is, one of these luminaries that has been, won an Ashoka Fellowship and really been someone that people look to for leadership. So without much more further ado, I just want to welcome Tim to speak and say how grateful and excited we are to hear his story and share some ideas with him tonight. And we'll have him speak for a bit, and then we'll do Q&A after that. So if people can hold questions to the end, I'll pass the microphone around and we'll have some good dialogue. Thanks.
Hello, I didn't realize I had to be a luminary. No one told me that. Holy cow. So I come from this mythical land called Los Angeles, California, and I just want to ask a few people, this white stuff that's falling from the air, I don't know what that is. So if somebody could tell me, it seemed like the end of the world earlier, but I'm sure it's going to be okay. Angel dust, there you go. That's aging with attitude.
That's what you really need in LA, is water that's at different temperatures.
That's right. That's right. We just need water of any temperature in Los Angeles, frankly. So I'm very happy to be here. When I first looked at Senior Planet online and saw Aging with Attitude, I thought, I'm home. I'm absolutely home. I think this is such a cool place, such a cool organization doing such great work, and a partner in crime with us in trying to change the way we think about this thing called getting older in the United States of America. So I founded this nonprofit called Engage about 16 years ago now, and we're really in the business of just trying to change the way people age and the way they think about aging. And there's some specific ways that we do that I'll cover in a second. We live in the United States, and I'm going to talk about aging as the problem, because I think that's kind of where we're at. We're a bit upside down in the U.S. about the way we view getting older. I don't think we like death much better, but aging is a slow second to dying. The biggest problem that I see is that I think most of us think of aging as a disease, as if there's something wrong with us that's getting older. When I talk in front of crowds a lot of times, I'll say how many people in the audience would like to get older, and about half the people raise their hand. And you think about what that tells us, is that 50% of the people in the audience prefer the alternative to getting older. And that's what we're up against. We're up against a society that doesn't like aging, doesn't like getting older. We also, in my world, there's this thing called warehousing. And he had said earlier the idea of nursing homes and assisted living, this idea that we want to separate aging from the rest of society. We really don't want to look at it. And again, I'm from Los Angeles, so I'm from the heart of darkness in this world. We're the ones who produce all these TV shows and films, and I live in a world of plastic surgery and nip and tuck. People constantly trying to change the way they look as they get older. Again, the aging process should be a beautiful thing. And this idea of being young is better than being old. I grew up in an Irish Catholic family, and the Irish are addicted to stories. It's a drug for us. And the dinner table in our house was like a competitive storytelling event every night. And what I saw at a very young age is older people tell better stories than younger people. So I ended up at that end of the dinner table, and you can see at my 6'3", 220, I got a lot of dessert because of that. And I've never really gotten away from that. You know, I always think I get paid to do what I always wanted to do as a kid. I just like to listen to older people tell stories, and now they actually pay me to do that, so it's fantastic. The other thing about the problem is that not everybody has a lot of money, you know, and that's becoming more and more evident as we get older. We used to retire at 65 and die around 67, which is easy to finance. It's also, you mentioned the Del Webb idea of golf courses and bingo. We're going to live until 95, 100, 105. The cover of Time magazine had a picture of a baby on it and said, will this baby live to be 117 years old this year? So the difference between 65 and dying at 67, fairly manageable. The idea of 40 years after you retire of doing nothing and having no money is a really bad idea. So the other thing that's changing now that I see is the concept of retirement, because I don't think retirement is the same thing back in the Del Webb days when we used to work ourselves half to death to defend the right to do absolutely nothing with the rest of it. You know, the idea of not doing something has become uncool. That you know, the thing that I love about Senior Planet is it's all about how do we make this cool. And what's cool is the idea of what you guys are doing is staying active in the community, learning new skills, creating yourself as a role model as to what could happen. And bingo, I don't know what to say about bingo. It might be okay for some people, but it actually might not be okay too. I'm not sure. I think we should have full contact bingo, where if you win, you get tackled. So when about 16, 17 years ago, I walked into a an affordable senior apartment community, which at the time I had no idea what that was. I was working in healthcare, and I was trying to change the way older adults got to the healthcare system. And I was very, very tired of bashing my head against the brick wall that is the Medicare healthcare system. And I met a housing developer, and he started talking to me about these places that he was building. So I walked in, and two things I noticed. There was this big club room, not much smaller than this space, and there was one person sitting in it. So they built this fantastic facility, and I'm walking around with a developer, and he's pointing to all these really cool things in the room that were so greatly developed, and what a fantastic building, and there's one guy in there. Parking lot's full, so I'm asking, where are the people? And he says, well, and started not answering the question in 17 different ways. So I walked over, and on the wall there was a calendar, and on the calendar there were two things every week. There was bingo, surprisingly, on Tuesday nights, and there was donuts on Saturday morning. And I thought, I don't like bingo very much, but donuts is it's not an activity, it's a food. It's a food that's not very good for you. And I thought, wow, this, you've really put a lot of thought into the building, but what's going on with this social structure you've created here? And as I was telling the boss man earlier, I thought, this is my world. Anyone can be a genius here if that's the bar you have to jump over. So I thought, I'm just going to start fresh. It's a blank canvas. So I started looking for a model, and I thought, how would we change this place? How would we change housing? And I looked around, and one, there were no models, and two, when they accidentally did something cool, I went to dozens and dozens of these places, and every once in a while there would be this magic person who walked in off the street and said, I want to volunteer my time, and he was a writing instructor or did pottery or whatever it may be. So on Tuesday afternoon, he would come in at 2 o'clock and teach whatever that class is. But then it would be cool briefly, and then they would kill it by duration, because he would teach creative writing on Tuesday afternoon at 2 o'clock forever. Nothing is interesting forever. So I started thinking, there's got to be a model where this works, and I looked at college. And I thought, if you look at retirement and college through the right set of goggles, they're a very similar proposition. It's a launching off point in your life. You're changing from one period of your life to another. You have time, you have opportunity. And I thought, when I went to college, I had moved once before I went to college, and it was a little bit traumatic, moving from New York to California, which is like moving from Mars to the moon. And I thought, I'm entering college, I'm a little nervous. And so I was nervous going to UC Santa Barbara my first day. And then somebody walked up to me and handed me a college catalog. And I opened it up, and I thought, my whole life is there. I opened up this catalog, and I thought, I can do anything I want with my life. And what I noticed about the people moving into these buildings was it was often after a tragedy. We deal with a lot of widows where I work. And so I thought, here's a person who has lost someone, is probably being moved across the country to be closer to family who very rarely see them. And they live in congregate housing for the first time in a really long time, and they don't really know how to do it well. So I thought, what if a guy like me handed her a college catalog and said, this is what the rest of your life could be like? And that was the start of the program. So our program is like college. It operates on a semester basis. Classes have a beginning, a middle, and an end. When they're over, we have culminating events where people utilize their skills in real-world ways, and I'll tell you a story in a bit about how that works. Constant change, constant input from the people who are going to the classes to make sure they're the right classes. We throw a lot of spaghetti against the wall. Some of it sticks, some of it doesn't. Hang gliding seemed like a good idea at the time, but I don't know. We hire professional teachers, professional artists, professional level instructors, college level instructors. So everyone is of a rank of being an instructor who expects the students to come to play. The culminating events, if we have an art class, we have an art show. If we teach a writing class, we have a staged play, a poetry slam. We've made films. I produce a radio show. A lot of our radio stuff comes from our residents themselves. We've also looked at the physical amenities, because what we noticed was we were always handed buildings that didn't quite fit what we wanted to do. So now we have the tail wagging the dog. We have a sign-off on the architectural plans of all of the buildings where we put our programs now. So when we need a computer space, they look like that. When we need a place to put something on stage, it's a theater. It's not just some corner of a club room somewhere. When I first walked into these club rooms, you could peel the nicotine off the walls, and there was the old bingo machine in the corner. Now we have art studios and media labs and theaters and performance areas. So we're changing the physical structure to match the intellectual amenities. I mentioned the radio show. The radio show is called Experience Talks, and we record it in Los Angeles. We're on the Pacifica network. And I started out as a journalist when I got out of college, and I already told you about the Irish story thing. So to me, you can see, interviewing Studs Terkel 2 months before he died. I was the last person to interview Tony Curtis. It's a kid in a candy store. It's pretty amazing. And the concept of the radio show is really about telling stories to show people what might be. And Studs on our show talked about, Studs was my idol of all idols, because he was the ultimate storyteller. Studs would talk about the non-celebrated human. So I show all these people who are famous, but what I really like are the not celebrated humans, as Studs called them, and he always had those kinds of stories. I'll tell you about a woman like that in a minute. So our results, what we're really trying to do, again, is change the landscape of this. So we're trying to prove that what we do works. We've been nominated an NEA Best Practices model by the National Endowment for the Arts. We're one of the 10 best practices programs in the country for creativity and aging. We produce about $18 million in annual savings by keeping independent seniors in this level of housing versus graduating to higher levels of care. We've done studies where people have shown that what we do improves their health. All of this is not rocket science, by the way. The great thing about this aging industry that we work in is the same studies that were done 30 years ago are the same stuff we're talking about now. If you avoid disease and disability, and you eat well, and you exercise, and all that list of things you're supposed to do. But the difference is, how do we get people to actually do that? I'm 53 years old, and I still haven't started my New Year's resolution. I know that I should eat better, and I know I should exercise when I travel to New York and I have to walk through a snowstorm to get to Senior Planet, but I don't do it very well. So what we've done is design a program around the idea of behavioral change to try and get people to take on significant behavior habits that will improve their health and longevity. The housing development, the difference between the expectation in California where we are when I got into this industry and what it is now is night and day, because once people see what one of these places should look like, that's what the expectation becomes. So I want to tell you a story about one of these non-celebrated humans that I talked about. We developed this building in 2005 called the Burbank Senior Artists Colony, and it was the first arts-oriented senior housing development that was predetermined to be so in the country. And while the building was in development, there was an article that was written in the LA Times, on the cover of the LA Times, and they had my picture there, and people started anticipating the fact that there was going to be this arts-based senior housing that had all these buzzers and whistles attached to it. So I'm sitting in my office one day, and Suzanne Canody calls me on the telephone and says, I heard about this arts building, and I'm thinking I would like to move in, but I'm not an artist. And so I said, well, that's okay. Why do you want to move in if you're not an artist? And she said, well, I think I might be one. And I thought, okay, this is the moment in time right here, because this is the start of the story that I'm going to tell. And the idea, and she said, so I started asking her questions. I said, it's funny because I have storytelling in my culture, and she was talking about how I might be a writer, and I said, everybody is a writer, everybody's a storyteller, you just have to kind of learn the skills and get to a place where you know how to do that. So I said, just move in, and we'll figure all the rest of it out later. So she moves into this place, and her first order of business is to join every single class that we put on in the building. And she joined acting classes and filmmaking classes and writing classes. But the one that she really was interested in was the writing class. And the assignment for the first class was write something that showed conflict. And so she writes a screenplay, which anybody in the audience who is a writer, writing a screenplay as the first thing you do as a writer is complete folly, idiocy. It's a very difficult medium to work in. So I get this script, I'm handed this thing, and it's a 12-page screenplay of a short film called Bandida by Suzanne Canody. And I opened it up, and what I really wanted was for it not to suck, truthfully. I wanted it to be just okay. And I started reading it, and I'm laughing out loud, and it's touching and funny and amazing, and the characters are real, and it's set right in the neighborhood where this woman lives. And the story tells this lovely story of this woman who rides senior transportation in Burbank to a liquor store. She's lowered on the handicapped lift down with her walker with the tennis balls on the front. She saunters in the liquor store and dons a mask from the film Scream, pulls out a pistol, and starts to rob the place. And during the course of the robbery, she makes friends with the older Armenian gentleman behind the counter to the point where he lets her get away with the crime in the end of it. And it's unbelievable. And I'm just thinking, oh my God. So I think I've got to do something about this. And I did the stupidest thing I've ever done in my life. I became a film producer. So we started this production company called The Last Gasp Productions, and we produced this film. We went out and we found an older director, and we had casting calls in the buildings, and we cast people from the building. There was a woman who did Lucille Ball's hair. She did the hair, some makeup guy. So it was all these people who were living in our buildings, and people who had mostly no experience whatsoever doing any of this. And if you can't read it, the tagline to the film is "A pistol, a plan, and sensible shoes." So we make this movie, and Suzanne sees her film for the first time. We entered it into the Valley Film Festival, and they showed it at a 350-seat theater in competition with 12 other films, and she won the audience award. Stands up on stage. This is the first time she's ever seen the movie, is with 350 other people, and she's standing on stage weeping to a standing ovation, and she's a rock star now. Here's this woman who is a single mother who had never done anything for herself. Just worked 2 jobs to try and get her kids through college, had no identity of her own, and then all of a sudden she just dusted off her dreams and hit the ball out of the park. And that's some of the cast members and Suzanne standing outside the El Portal Theater in the NoHo Arts District in LA. So the other thing we did is, because I'm in radio, another one of my heroes is Ira Glass, who is the host and producer of This American Life at the time on the radio. So I call up Ira, who I don't know, but I'm in the radio business, so I just assume he wants to talk to me. And I actually get him on the phone, and I tell him this story about Suzanne's little film. And he says, well, I'm right in the midst of putting together my television show for Showtime, and this sounds like a really cool visual thing, so we'd like to actually come out and shoot it. So Suzanne's story of the making of Bandida ends up on Showtime on national television, and so now here's little old Suzanne Canody walking in Trader Joe's in Burbank down the street, and people are stopping her every aisle and saying, I gotta know, did your film make it into the Sundance Film Festival? So the reason I tell this story, and it's a big story, it's not a normal story, it doesn't happen to everybody, but what we're trying to do is tell big stories. You go on Senior Planet's website, it's the same thing. We're trying to change the way people think about this. And Suzanne is just a normal person who just took a shot. She took a risk. She put it out there. She went to a class and she thought she might be a writer, and she happened to nail it. But the thing is that her life has changed because of it. And frankly, I'm kind of jealous of her. And I guess that's kind of my favorite part of my job, as I go around and I create these people that I then become envious of. I want to be them when I grow up, you know, and we have kids come in, and Suzanne now mentors at-risk teens, and she's doing art, she's still writing, she's done stage plays. You know, this woman had no life, and now it's all just expanded into this huge thing. And we have these kids come into the building next door who are troubled 16, 17-year-old boys usually. And they talk about how when they retire, they can't wait to live at the Burbank Senior Artist Colony. I think, you know, that's a change. You know, we couldn't wait to not go visit our grandparents in the wherever that place is. And now there's this just wacky building next to this school that the kids want to move into. So that is the moral of the story, of Suzanne's story. And the cool thing is that that this idea of arts-based housing has now developed into 2 new buildings, and we have 2 new ones under construction. The one in the North Hollywood Arts District is actually right around the corner from the theater where Suzanne's film premiered, and it's a new 126-unit senior apartment community, and it has an open-to-the-public theater in its lobby. So there's an 80-seat state-of-the-art theater with a box office and a marquee, and the Road Theater Company, which is a professional award-winning theater company that we hired to run the program. So they have their whole season of plays there, and on the side, for drastically reduced rent, they provide theatrical and acting and new works programs for our seniors and for school kids in the area. The other one is in Long Beach, the 200 units, the largest of the 3. And then we have intergenerational models in development in Southern California, and starting to grow the model outside to 3 pilot cities, Portland, Minneapolis, and the Research Triangle of North Carolina around Chapel Hill, Raleigh, Durham. So that is my story, and I'd love to open it up for questions or screams of anguish. NoHo is actually nipped from New York. It's in North Hollywood, a section of Los Angeles. But it's interesting the way it started. Yeah, the way it started was there was a restaurant owner who opened a restaurant in North Hollywood, and he hated the name North Hollywood because it sounded like Hollywood's second sister. So he nipped NoHo from here because they were from New York, and he really just wanted more restaurant patrons, but he developed it into an arts district.
We're going to do questions. Am I allowed to ask a couple questions first, and then we'll throw it to the audience? Is that fair? All right, I've been rehearsing these. So one of the things that you talked about is this idea of developing the arts programs for older adult participants. And you've worked with a bunch of younger folks as well. Do you think there's something distinctive about how people in their later years approach the artistic process and what they're bringing to it, what they're getting out of it? What makes it a distinctive experience for older people?
Yeah, I mean, one of the unfortunate distinctive experiences is that almost every arts class starts with "I'm not." That's the common phrase. I actually teach writing. I started the nonprofit as teaching writing, and every single student would walk in and say, "I'm not a writer." They're coming to a writing class, but they would say, "I'm not a writer." So I think that the arts and being an artist can be intimidating. So I think especially for older adults, and our population is everywhere from late 50s to our oldest resident is 104. So we're really dealing with 50 plus, almost 60 years of generations of folks. And I think a lot of people did not have access to arts and think that there's some magic juju in being an artist. And so one of the things that we try and do, one is try and motivate people to just try, like Suzanne did, and then learn to do it better by virtue of continuing to coming to classes and by being a part of these culminating events. When we have plays, what we're really trying to do is, one, celebrate the art of someone in the building, and also to create a sense of if Mary can do it, I can do it too. Kind of knocking someone off the podium to a certain extent, creating a sense of inherent competition. Like Suzanne's just some normal lady. I can write better than she can. And the thing is that I'll use any trick I can, any trick in the book to try and catalyze somebody to just dust off their dreams and try it. But I think the key to adult teaching, I had a teacher who once said, when you're in a writing class, teach the class you're in, not the one you planned. And that's the most amazing little tidbit of advice, because in older adult education you have a wide range of abilities and learning experiences and learning styles. So you've got to really be adaptive in your approach to the class and try and pull people into it. My style of writing is more about inspiring people to write versus teaching people how to.
And in terms of when you talk about the arts as a group of activities, what are the what kinds of things are people doing? Writing and script writing, I gather. What other sorts of things do you do at the sites? And are some of them more transformational than others?
Yeah, like I said, we try a lot of different things. The arts, it's multidisciplinary across almost every discipline. We've done filmmaking, writing for radio. We do creative arts in terms of the fine arts with painting, life drawing, sculpture, mask making. We've done needle arts, music, dance, drumming. One of the early photos is a drum circle. The guy who is in that picture. This is a cool story, actually. That's Clarence Johnson, who was a drummer for people like Miles Davis and John Coltrane. And when I first met him, you talk about somebody who has stories. He's been on tour with Miles Davis. I think there's a couple of stories in that. Not many I can tell while being broadcast live on the internet, but what happened with Clarence is 84 years old now, and his gigs are starting to get few and far between, and he's still got to make a living. He's a typical artist. So what we did was reconstitute him as a drum circle facilitator. So, the arts is a broad brushstroke for us in terms of, it's really about how do we inspire creativity in the audience. And absolutely some are more transformative than others. I think, to me, the story-based stuff where you have people bringing their own stories into it tends to be the thing that changes the way people look at this the most, because I think that when you live in a society where older people are told all the time that they're less than worthwhile than people that are younger, you tend to start to believe it yourself. And so when people tell their own story and someone can sit in that audience and hear that story and understand why it's important, those moments to me are the ones that not only transform the person whose story it is, but the audience around why this is important at all.
Can you talk a little bit about the role of technology in this? I know here we are at Roots, right? But you mentioned before that you had this.
That's such an in question.
Yes. Here, we'll throw the ball up in the air. But talk a little bit about the way that technology is giving us some opportunities to do this work in more. In newer and different ways. You mentioned that novella program that you had. Just discuss that a little bit.
Yeah, what he's talking about. We got this grant to bring a theater company over from Dublin a couple of years ago, and it was such a cool experience. There are these Irish older actors, and everybody would just go out and get drunk every night, and all these great stories would happen, and they developed some stuff together. And we thought, if they just go away and it stops, we're never going to get another grant to fly 10 crazy actors from Ireland again. So one of our program people, who was a computer geek, said, there's this Skypecast thing that they're doing now. So monthly we have this Skypecast between our little theater company in Burbank and this one in Dublin, and we've been writing this novella, like a weird telecast of a Mexican kind of soap opera called The Boyfriend, and the boyfriend lives in Burbank, and the two girlfriends live in Dublin, and they trade back and forth writing episodes for each other, and actually Skype cast it between the two cities. So it's, we're always just trying to find new and different ways to do just about everything. And then everybody started thinking, let's Skype cast everyone. I think the thing that's interesting about technology is technology is one of these things that's a door that can open to so many other things. And the idea of knowledge and learning and arts and socialization and knowledge and all of those kinds of things. So, and it's the older adults are the fastest growing population in this world, fastest growing population on Facebook. That is a fact that I think a lot of people are still trying to get their hands around, that this is it used to be, my mom, I couldn't get her to use a computer if I held a gun to her head. But that's changed completely in the last several years.
Last question before I kick it to the audience. Your program is primarily in California at this point. You've got a few spaces that you're developing in new locations.
Yep.
But for most of the people here, they don't have access to the program. So
Yep.
what can people do who are not living in one of your residential locations but maybe inspired by the work you're doing? Are there, what do you suggest for people when they say, well, what about, I wish my mom could be in your program, or I wish I could be in your program? What can people do, and what places can people find similar experiences?
Yeah, we've been in the media a lot, so I've been asked by a lot of people in a lot of different areas, and several from New York, about expanding our work to other places, and since we are only one relatively small nonprofit in this world, what we're trying to do is catalyze this to happen and this to be required, basically. It would be really nice. There are requirements in housing. None of them are the right requirements, unfortunately. So we're trying to change the way people look at this. I think we work in the aging industry, and we were talking earlier about how the aging industry itself is stuck. You read a lot of the stuff about what aging is, and even experts in it. I go to gerontology conversations, and you'll notice me because I'm the guy who's trying to hang himself in the back, because the ideas are so hackney and old. And they don't need to be, because there are great examples of this work. There's programming here, and I'd be glad if people want to email me. I can get you some contacts in New York, but also demand things. I think one of the great things that Senior Planet is doing is there's this sense that there's this tidal wave coming, and you'd better be a part of it. And that's the way we should approach this. Aging with attitude should be a mandate, and that's the only way it's going to change, is for you guys to make sure your voice is heard. I think this is incredible. I travel a lot. I see all kinds of things. And when I first saw the website and the content, I just thought, oh my God, this is so amazing. But seeing this place and the vibrancy and the people who work here and how cool it is, this is the way it should be. And my work is just it's another extension of that. We're, brothers of a different mother.
I like it.